Emily met Ryan in her second year of university. What started as a group project quickly turned into something more, something that would eventually cost her everything. Emily wasn't looking for love. She had transferred to Ridgeway University. After her first year, focused on her studies, and determined to make her parents proud. That changed during a marketing seminar when she got paired with Ryan for a group assignment. Ryan was sharp, confident, and well-liked by everyone. He didn't try too hard to impress her, which made her notice him even more. Their first few meetings were purely academic, library sessions, coffee shop brainstorming, and group chats, but there was a natural ease between them. Soon, they started meeting outside of class. A casual coffee turned into regular meetups. Their project ended, but their connection didn't. They began spending more time together. Class breaks turned into long walks around campus. Late-night calls became routine. They weren't officially dating, but everyone around them assumed they were. By the end of the semester, it was obvious to both of them that what they had wasn't casual. Ryan told her one night, "I'm not good at saying cheesy stuff, but I think about you more than I probably should." Emily smiled and replied, "Same here." They became a couple soon after that. The relationship wasn't dramatic, it just grew naturally. They studied together, supported each other through exams, and made quiet plans for the future. Emily wasn't the type to share too much with her parents, but she dropped hints about Ryan during calls. Her parents didn't show much interest. Ryan, on the other hand, had told his family about Emily. They knew he was serious about her. As graduation neared, the pressure from home started building for Emily. Her parents began mentioning proposals. They reminded her that they expected her to marry someone of their choosing. Every time she tried to steer the conversation away, they circled back. At first, she thought it was just casual talk, but she realized quickly that they were serious. Ryan noticed the change. Emily became quieter, distracted during conversations. When he asked, she told him everything. He didn't panic. He believed they could fix it. He said he would come speak to her parents if needed. Emily hesitated. She knew her family well. They wouldn't approve of Ryan. Not because of anything he had done, but because they already had someone else in mind. Ryan stayed optimistic. "They'll change their minds. We've been together for 2 years. That has to count for something." But Emily wasn't so sure. One afternoon, she got the call. Her parents had accepted a proposal from a family friend. The wedding was being arranged. She was expected to come home after graduation and get engaged immediately. Ryan offered to go with her, to talk to them face to face. Emily didn't know what to say. She didn't say no, but she didn't say yes either. And that silence started to shift everything. They tried to keep things going. Ryan messaged her daily, called her at night. But she was emotionally pulling back. She wasn't doing it on purpose, it just felt like she was being pulled in two directions. The last week before graduation, they sat together in their usual spot by the campus fountain. Ryan asked, "So, what now?" Emily looked away and said, "I don't know." That was the last time they saw each other before she left. Emily left campus with uncertainty. Ryan had waited for an answer. But she never gave one. And her silence was louder than any goodbye. After graduation, Emily returned to her hometown. The mood in her house was already set, formal meetings were scheduled, guests were expected, and wedding planning had begun. Her parents acted as if her future was already decided. The man they chose for her was named Adam. He came from a respectable family and worked in a steady corporate job. He was everything her parents had ever wanted in a son-in-law. Emily had never met him before the engagement was finalized. Adam was polite when they first met. He asked her a few questions, smiled often, and didn't push. He treated her kindly. But it was clear they came from two very different worlds. She barely spoke during their meetings, but her parents didn't seem to notice, or care. Back in her room, Emily scrolled through her phone and opened her chat with Ryan. He had messaged her the day she left campus, "Let me know when you're ready to fight for us." She never replied. Weeks passed. Her phone stayed silent. She didn't reach out. Neither did he. Eventually, Emily got engaged to Adam. A quiet ceremony was held with close relatives. She wore a dress her mother picked. Smiled in pictures her father wanted. Played the role everyone expected. She didn't tell Adam anything about her past. She thought there was no point. That chapter was closed. Or at least, she told herself it was. The wedding happened 2 months later. It was simple, respectful, and well organized. Adam treated her with care from the start. He gave her space. He tried to make her feel comfortable in their new home. Emily appreciated his effort but remained emotionally distant. Adam didn't question her much. He assumed she was just adjusting. And in some ways, she was. But deep down, she knew what was missing. One afternoon, while Adam was at work, Emily sat on the bed and opened her laptop. Without thinking, she typed Ryan's name into social media. His profile hadn't changed. Same city. Same face. But everything else felt unfamiliar. She stared at his page for a few minutes before typing a message. Hi. She almost deleted it. But instead, she hit send. A few hours later, Ryan replied, "Didn't expect this." That one line pulled her back into everything she thought she had buried. They talked that night. Not about what happened, just small things. Work, memories, random jokes. The comfort returned instantly. Days turned into weeks. Their messages became frequent. Then calls started. Emily didn't tell Adam. She justified it in her mind. It was just talking. Nothing more, but deep down, she knew what it really was. Ryan never asked her why she didn't fight for him. He didn't bring up the past. He just picked up where they left off, as if nothing had changed. And in those moments, Emily felt more connected to him than she ever did with Adam. She started staying up late, talking to Ryan after Adam fell asleep. Sometimes, she would smile at her phone during dinner, reading a message while Adam spoke about his day. He never questioned her. One evening, Ryan asked, "Are you happy?" Emily didn't answer. Emily thought she could keep the two parts of her life separate, her present with Adam and her past with Ryan. But living two lives never lasts forever. Emily adjusted to married life on the surface. She woke up early, prepared breakfast, and handled small household tasks. Adam appreciated her efforts. He always said thank you. He brought her flowers for no reason and made time to listen to her. To everyone around them, they looked like a peaceful couple settling into their rhythm, but behind that quiet routine, Emily was carrying a secret that grew heavier each day. She was still in regular contact with Ryan. What started as occasional messages had become a daily habit. They talked late into the night while Adam slept. They shared memories from their university days, funny updates from work, and moments they'd once imagined having together. Sometimes, Ryan sent her photos of the old campus or their favorite cafe. Each message pulled her deeper into a world she thought she had left behind. Emily convinced herself there was nothing wrong. She told herself that it was just conversation, that she wasn't doing anything physical or betraying Adam in a direct way. But she also knew that if Adam ever found out, it would feel like a betrayal to him. She began guarding her phone more. She turned off notifications. She avoided leaving her screen unlocked. Her responses to Adam became shorter. She smiled less during dinner. She laughed more with Ryan than she did with her husband. Adam noticed, but he didn't say anything at first. He simply assumed Emily was still adjusting or maybe stressed from settling into married life. He tried to make her comfortable. He planned a weekend trip. He offered to help with chores. He even bought her a new phone when hers started lagging. Emily thanked him, but her mind stayed elsewhere. Ryan never asked her to leave Adam. He never pressured her to meet. But there were moments, pauses in conversation, long silences, where Emily felt something lingering. A feeling that maybe, if she made a different decision, they could still be together. One night, after a long call with Ryan, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. She didn't feel proud. But she didn't stop either. A full year passed like this. By then, Adam had begun to see the pattern clearly. Emily avoided eye contact. She barely spoke unless spoken to. She smiled at her phone more than she smiled at him. And yet, she acted as if everything was normal. One evening, after dinner, Adam sat her down. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Is there someone else?" Emily's heart skipped, but her face stayed calm. "Why would you think that?" "You're not here anymore," he said. "Not really." She didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it either. She simply stayed quiet. Adam didn't raise his voice. He just looked at her for a long time and said, "If you want to talk about it, I'm here. But I can't keep living next to someone who's mentally somewhere else." Emily nodded but didn't say much. She went to bed early that night, and for the first time, didn't text Ryan, but the next day, she did. Emily had been living in two worlds. But Adam was no longer willing to pretend. The truth was now unavoidable. Emily thought she could maintain the balance. She believed if she kept everything quiet, it wouldn't hurt anyone. But Adam was more observant than she realized, and silence couldn't cover what was missing between them. Over time, Adam's tone changed. He spoke less. His cheerful efforts became routine. He stopped planning date nights or suggesting weekend activities. He wasn't angry, just withdrawn. And that distance mirrored what Emily had been doing for months. Then one morning, Emily found her phone on the dining table. It was open to her chat with Ryan. Adam was sitting quietly nearby. He didn't say anything at first. Just handed her the phone and waited. She looked down at the screen. Their messages from the night before were still there. Nothing overly romantic, but enough to raise questions, enough to make the situation clear. Adam finally spoke. "How long?" Emily didn't answer immediately. After a pause, she said, "A while." He nodded. "I figured." There was no shouting. No dramatic breakdown. Just a long silence that felt heavier than any argument could. "I've done everything I could to make this marriage work," Adam said. "But I can't compete with someone who has your heart." Emily looked down, still not defending herself. Adam continued, "You never really gave this a chance. You've been somewhere else since the beginning." She wanted to say something. Maybe explain that she was confused. That she didn't plan for this to happen. But none of it felt like a valid excuse. "I should have seen it sooner," Adam added. "But I wanted to believe it would get better." That night, they didn't speak again. Emily slept in the guest room for the first time. The air between them had changed, clearer now, but colder. The next morning, Adam made breakfast like usual. Then, just before leaving for work, he said, "You need to make a choice." Emily knew what he meant. That day, she texted Ryan and told him everything. About the conversation. About the phone. About Adam's reaction. Ryan replied, "What are you going to do?" She stared at the message for a long time. She thought about the past year. About the guilt. About Adam's patience. About Ryan's silence and understanding. She thought about what she wanted, what she always told herself she wanted. That evening, when Adam came home, she was waiting in the living room. "I've made my decision," she said quietly. Adam sat down. He didn't look hopeful or angry. "Just tired. I want a divorce," Emily said. Adam nodded slowly. "Okay." It wasn't a dramatic ending. There were no final arguments or pleas. Just a quiet acknowledgement of what had already been broken. For a long time, over the next few days, they began the process. Paperwork, discussions about the house, how to separate things fairly. It was all handled with calm and distance. Emily informed her parents. Their reaction wasn't calm, they were furious. Her father shouted. Her mother cried. They couldn't understand why she would leave a stable, respectful marriage. They accused her of being selfish, irresponsible, and immature. Emily didn't respond much. She had made her choice, and she stood by it. When everything was finalized, Adam left the house first. He packed quietly, shook her hand before leaving, and said, "I hope you find what you're looking for." She didn't cry. Instead, she picked up her phone and messaged Ryan, "It's done." Emily ended her marriage for the man she had always loved. She thought that once she closed one chapter, the next would open easily. But things didn't unfold the way she expected. Emily moved into a small apartment not far from the city center. It wasn't much, but it was hers. No shared decisions, no quiet tension, just space and silence. She texted Ryan often. The messages felt lighter now. There was no more hiding, no guilt to carry. She assumed they were finally free to be together. Ryan responded like usual, friendly, consistent, but never overly excited. He didn't ask to meet in person. He didn't say anything about the divorce directly, just replied with, "Hope you're okay." Emily brushed it off. She told herself maybe he just needed time. A week later, she called him. It was the first time they spoke on the phone after everything was finalized. He answered casually. "So, it's official?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Everything's done. I've moved out. Papers are signed." There was a pause. "I didn't think it would happen," Ryan said. "Well, it did," she replied. "I couldn't keep living that way." Another pause. "I see," he said. "So, what now?" Emily waited for him to say something more, something hopeful. But he didn't. "I thought we could meet," she said. "Talk in person." "Yeah, maybe soon," Ryan replied. "Things have been a bit busy lately." It wasn't the response. She expected. That night, Emily sat alone in her new apartment and stared at her phone. Ryan didn't message again. For the next few days, the conversations were shorter. The replies took longer. She told herself not to overthink. He had always been calm, reserved. Maybe he was just taking time to process. Maybe he was giving her space after the divorce, but as 2 weeks passed, it became harder to ignore the distance. Finally, one evening, she called him again. "Ryan, can we meet?" she asked. "It's been weeks." He hesitated. "I think there's something we need to talk about." Emily's voice tightened. "What is it?" "I'm seeing someone," he said. The line went silent. "You're what?" she asked. "I've been seeing someone for a few months. It wasn't serious at first, but it's gotten more stable lately." Emily didn't speak. "I didn't tell you because I didn't think you'd go through with the divorce," he continued. "I didn't want to complicate things. You let me leave my marriage," she said slowly, "while you were dating someone else?" "I didn't ask you to leave," Ryan said. "You made that decision." The words stung more than she expected. He wasn't wrong. "But it didn't make it easier. I thought we still had something," she said. "I thought so too," he replied. "But then you disappeared. You got married. I waited, and eventually I stopped." Emily hung up without saying goodbye. She stared at the blank screen for a long time. There was no noise in her apartment. No messages. No voice calling her name. For the first time in months, she felt truly alone. Emily walked away from her marriage. For someone who had already let go. Now, she had no one to return to, and nowhere she truly belonged. The night after Ryan's confession, Emily sat in the dark with her phone in her hand. No new messages. No missed calls. No apology from him. She had imagined every outcome, except this one. She had given up a stable home, a caring husband, and her family's support, thinking Ryan would be there waiting. But he wasn't. He had already moved on. And now, so had Adam. Emily's parents were furious when they found out about the divorce. Her mother refused to speak to her. Her father called once, only to say, "Don't come back here. You made your decision." She didn't argue. She knew trying to explain would only make things worse. Her apartment felt colder in the days that followed. She stopped texting Ryan. She didn't block him, but she muted the conversation thread and turned off notifications. Ryan didn't reach out again. One morning, she checked social media and saw a photo, Ryan with another woman. They were at a cafe, sitting close, smiling. The caption read, "Still can't believe I get to do life with you." She didn't cry. She just stared for a long time, then closed the app. Her life became routine again, but now, the silence was different. Before, she had Adam's voice in the background. Now, it was just the low hum of her fridge and the ticking of her wall clock. She started going on walks just to get out of the apartment. Sometimes she'd sit in a park and scroll through old photos. Pictures from university. Her wedding day. Vacations with Adam. All memories from lives she no longer had access to. Emily tried reconnecting with friends, but most were distant now. Some had taken Adam's side. Others simply didn't know what to say. She looked for work but struggled to focus. She attended interviews, nodded through questions, and left feeling empty. She wasn't present, not really. One day, she walked past a bookstore and saw Adam coming out of a nearby coffee shop. He looked different, relaxed, smiling, talking with someone. He didn't see her. She stepped back and watched from a distance. He looked happy. She went home that night and sat with her laptop, considering whether to message him. Just to say sorry. Or thank you. Or anything. But in the end, she didn't send anything. There was nothing left to say. Emily stayed alone in that apartment. Weeks turned into months. Her parents didn't call. Ryan never checked in. Adam never looked back. And no one knocked on her door. She spent her days applying for jobs, eating alone, watching the same shows on repeat. Some nights, she would stare at her reflection and wonder how everything unraveled so quietly. There had been no dramatic scenes, no major fights. Just a series of small choices that slowly erased the life she once had. She told herself she had followed her heart. But in the end, her heart had already been left behind. Emily had no one left to turn to. She looked back on the life she abandoned, and realized that every door she once had was now closed. Emily tried to settle into a new routine. She kept her head down and avoided contact with anyone from her past. There were no more expectations, no more pressure to play the role of a wife or a daughter. But the silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like absence. She picked up a part-time job at a local bookstore. The hours were short, the pay minimal, but it gave her something to do. Most days passed slowly. She stocked shelves, sorted deliveries, and avoided unnecessary conversation with customers. No one there knew who she was, and that made things easier. Occasionally, she would hear a name or see a face that reminded her of Ryan or Adam. A familiar voice in a crowd. A car that looked like Adam's. A ringtone that sounded like Ryan's text tone. Her heart would pause, but nothing ever came of it. One weekend, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. It was her mother. The voice on the other end was cold. "We heard you're living alone. Your aunt saw you near the park last week." Emily didn't know what to say. "You embarrassed us," her mother continued. "You walked out on a man who respected you. For what?" Emily didn't respond. Her mother didn't ask if she was okay. Didn't offer help. She only said, "Don't call us unless it's important," and hung up. Emily stared at the screen for a while, then placed the phone face down on the table. That night, she opened her drawer and pulled out a box she hadn't touched in months. Inside were wedding photos, old messages, and a few things she had saved from university. She went through them one by one, remembering how each moment had felt so certain at the time. She paused on a wedding photo with Adam. They were standing outside the reception hall, smiling at the camera. Nothing about the photo looked forced. In fact, it looked calm. Solid. She placed it aside and looked at a different one. Her and Ryan under the big tree on campus, back when they thought they'd spend their lives together. That part of her life was over. The messages. The late-night calls. The second chances. They were all gone. She searched for Ryan's profile again. He had removed her or blocked. Maybe. She didn't feel angry. She understood. Everyone had moved forward, while she had been standing in the middle, hoping the past would somehow fit into the present. At the bookstore the next day, she served a couple that reminded her of what she once had with Adam. The way they spoke to each other. The quiet comfort between them. It made her wonder what her marriage could have become if she had given it more time, more effort. She used to believe that real love was meant to survive anything. That if something felt strong once, it was worth holding on to forever. But now, she wasn't sure. Maybe love wasn't always enough. Maybe timing mattered more. That evening, she walked home slower than usual. The streets were quiet. The weather was turning cold again. She didn't turn on the lights when she got home. Just sat by the window and looked out. No one was coming. No one was calling. There was nothing left to wait for. When Emily finally looked back, she realized how much damage her silence had caused, but by then, the damage was irreversible. Days turned into weeks. Emily remained alone, going to work, coming back, and repeating the same pattern. Her phone stayed silent. Her name didn't come up in conversations anymore, not with family, not with friends. She had faded from the picture. One afternoon, she received an email from a former university acquaintance. Nothing personal, just a forwarded invitation to a department reunion event. She deleted it without opening the link. Later that evening, she scrolled through her messages from long ago. The thread with Adam was still there, although inactive. She had never deleted it. The last message was from him. "I won't chase you anymore, Emily. I gave you everything I had." She locked her phone and left it face down again. The next morning, she walked past a cafe and spotted someone familiar through the window. It was Adam. He was sitting across from a woman, smiling, engaged in conversation. Emily stopped for just a second too long. The woman touched his hand across the table. Emily looked away and kept walking. She didn't feel jealous. It was something else. A quiet confirmation that the chapter had closed without her. She had walked out, and he had eventually done what she hadn't, moved on. That night, she typed out a message to him. "I saw you today. I hope you're doing well." Then deleted it before sending. There was no point anymore. What was left to say? The next day at work, her manager handed her an envelope. "A man dropped this off for you earlier," she said. Didn't give his name. Inside was a card with a simple line: "Some mistakes can't be fixed. Just learn from them." No name. No number. Nothing else. Emily didn't know who sent it. Maybe it was Adam. Maybe it was someone else. But the message stayed with her. That evening, she stood in front of a mirror and barely recognized herself. Not physically, but emotionally. There was no anger, no sadness, no spark she had lost. Everything slowly, one piece at a time. Her marriage. Her parents' respect. Her past relationship. Her place in the world. She had expected time to fix things, to create clarity. But all it did was show her how many chances she let pass by. For the first time in months, she opened her old journal. The last entry was written the night before she married Adam. It read, "I don't know what I'm doing. But maybe choosing someone who truly cares for me isn't the worst decision." She closed the book and stared out the window. The city lights blinked in the distance, calm and distant, just like her life had become. The next day, she quit her job.no plan. No explanation, she needed to start somewhere else. Somewhere far from familiar roads and faces. She packed a suitcase with only what she needed. Left everything else behind. Before locking the door for the final time, she scribbled something on a sticky note and placed it on the counter. "Tell whoever comes next." She wasn't running away. She just stayed silent too long. Emily disappeared quietly, but someone from her past still searched for the truth she never shared. Months passed. Emily had relocated to a smaller town on the coast, where no one knew her name. She worked at a bookstore during the day and took long walks along the shoreline in the evenings. No one asked about her past, and she offered no details. She lived simply. Quietly. She didn't have social media anymore. She had deleted her accounts when she left. Her phone number changed too. She didn't expect anyone to look for her, and she wasn't trying to be found. One day, while organizing books in the shop, she noticed a familiar name on the cover of a new novel, Adams. It wasn't his full name, but the initials and the photo on the back made it clear that he had published a collection of short stories. She bought a copy and read through it that night. Most of the stories were fictional, but a few parts felt too familiar to be imagined. One in particular told of a man who married a woman he deeply loved, only to watch her slip away while looking at someone else behind him. In the final pages, the man says, "She didn't leave because she stopped loving me. She left because she never let herself begin." Emily closed the book and sat in silence for a long time. The next day, she mailed a short handwritten letter to the publishing house. It only said, "Tell the author his words reached the person they were meant for. She's sorry." No return address. No name. Nothing more. Back in the city, Adam was still working at his firm and occasionally doing readings for his book. He had indeed moved on, or at least tried to. He was seeing someone new, but even then, there were moments when he would pause while typing an email or reading a passage, and wonder, where did she go? He never tried to find her. He respected her silence, even if he didn't understand it. When he received the letter, he read it 3 times. He knew exactly who it was from. He folded it gently and placed it inside his notebook, the same one where he had written his wedding vows years ago. That evening, he visited the coffee shop where he used to wait for Emily after work. It had changed owners, but the corner table remained the same. He sat there quietly, sipping his drink, not expecting anything. He just wanted to remember. Across the city, Emily stood at the edge of the water, watching the waves come in and out. She didn't regret disappearing, but she did regret not explaining. There was a difference between closure and avoidance. She had chosen the second, but now, at least, she had said sorry. Even if he never replied, even if they never crossed paths again, she had finally said something, and sometimes, that was all that could be done. She finally turned around, but the place she once called home no longer waited. 1 year passed. Emily had built a life of quiet routines, early bookstore mornings, solitary meals, and silent evenings. She had peace, but not happiness. She had freedom, but not fulfillment. Some days she would still dream of Arcel. Other days, of Adam, but most days, she didn't dream at all. One morning, while sorting returned books, she paused at the sound of her coworker's voice. "Hey, did you hear about that author? Adam or Dot, his new book just hit the bestsellers list." Emily looked up but didn't say anything. She didn't need to. That night, she looked him up for the first time in over a year. She found interviews, photos, a clip of him on stage reading from his book. He looked the same. Just more tired around the eyes. She watched quietly, then she saw a photo of him with a woman. Smiling. Holding hands. At a book signing. It wasn't the smile of someone faking it anymore. It was real, and she understood. Adam had moved on, fully. Finally. He no longer waited for a message. No longer paused at doorways hoping she would appear. The letter she'd sent had been folded and stored away, but it no longer weighed him down. He had healed, not because he stopped loving, but because he accepted that love didn't always guarantee forever. One rainy afternoon, Emily sat at a small cafe and wrote in her journal. She wrote what she never said out loud: I loved Arcel because he made me feel young and reckless. I loved Adam because he made me feel seen. But I left because I didn't know how to choose between the past and the present. Now, I have neither. She closed the journal and walked out into the rain without her umbrella. A stranger brushed past her, smiled politely, and walked on. That was life now. Simple. Unattached. She sometimes thought about reaching out to Adam again, but then stopped herself. What would she say? What would he owe her now? Nothing. That chapter had ended, not with anger. Not with betrayal. Just silence, distance, and time. Months later, Adam's second book was published. In it, he wrote, some people come into your life like a season. You don't expect them to stay. You just hope they leave you better than they found you. Emily read those words in a bookstore window. She didn't buy the book this time, she just smiled faintly and walked away, and that was the end of it. Grand reunion. No redemption arc. No going back. Emily chose her past over her present, and lost everything, not out of cruelty. Not out of selfishness. Just confusion, fear, and a moment of weakness that stretched too long. Now, she lived with that choice, not in regret, but in quiet understanding, because some losses don't destroy you, they simply reshape you.